This is Coach Schuman here for the Success for Life podcast. I don't know what season number it is, but we're pretty deep into this season now. So I forgot. I can't remember if we started 16 or 17, but we're pretty deep in here. I got a great guest here today, actually a relative of which we just found out right now, of one of my past guests, one of my actually most popular guests. Where this will be on the business side of things. His relative was is a famous quarterback coach. So my guest today, Michael Trezza, originally from New Jersey, lives out in San Diego, longtime entrepreneur, roots in the tech field. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. But over the last 2 years, is really looking to make a dent in the educational system, make an impact in there. Much needed, in my opinion, because there's a lot of things going on in there that I don't agree with, and I think need to be improved. But we'll get into the weeds on that a little bit here. Without further ado, let me introduce Michael Trezza.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mike, tell them a little bit more of your background. I dived in briefly, but talk about your background as a tech entrepreneur, what you've been doing and how you got into the education field.
Yeah, absolutely. It was sort of a roundabout way. I got started in tech in the early 2000s. 2001, I started a web design and development agency on the East Coast of New Jersey, in Edgewater, actually. And I grew that into about 2008. Everything was going fine. Then 2008 came along, and it kind of took the legs out of everything. The financial crisis happened, and it really impacted my business. I needed a change of scenery, and I decided to move out to California, which is where I am now. So I'm in San Diego. 2009, I started another tech company. This time, it was a software development company instead of the design side of things. And I grew that until COVID came around and changed things for us. It really impacted my business badly. It was a very successful business, and it still is to a certain extent. But I think where everything shifted for me was about 5 years ago, or exactly 5 years ago. My daughter was born, so I've got a 5-year-old little girl, our only child. And when she was born, everything really changed for me, as I'm sure every parent says, right? I started to think about the sort of world that I was bringing her into, and started to take a deep look at the educational system and what was happening. And I was really disappointed in what I saw, and that led me to have a sort of a massive kind of epiphany and pivot. And when COVID came around, it gave me the opportunity to change tack, to really shift what I was focusing on, and start building a new company, which is Giant Leaps Learning, which is what brought us here today.
And well, it's interesting you say that. I have a 6-year-old about to be a 7-year-old. That's also my only
going on 17
child. What's that?
Going on 17 also.
Oh yeah, he tells me what to do all day long.
Yeah.
And he knows more than I do. All his years of experience.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I'm kind of in and I remember, so your child's 5, kindergarten or not yet?
Yeah, she's going into kindergarten this coming year, September. Yeah.
Okay. So I remember being at that point. Actually, we were at that during COVID, and a lot of things going on during that time period. I think he just was finishing up, I guess maybe the last few months of COVID. Yeah. He was finishing up, what do you call it, pre-K. And then, so now he's in first grade. Now he goes to private school. And we decided not to go to the public school for a lot of different reasons. Yeah. I was a public school were you a public school?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I like to say that, like, maybe there was some indoctrination in public school when I was there, but I certainly didn't, I really didn't see a ton of it the way that it is today. So the way that education is, the way that they're trying to form not just math and learning and history, but they're trying to kind of be supplemental parents in a sense, and that's not what we were looking for. We were looking for someone to educate and our children, and that's why we kind of went the private school route. And I could
Sure.
tell you that when I was young, I used to say I would never send my kids to private school. I can tell you that. I was definitely that person. I was like, "There's no way I went to public school.
Right,
Why would you pay?"
right.
You know, and as you becoming older and you see certain things, you
Mhm.
think that there are things that the public school does really well. I think with special education, probably
Yeah.
kids that have special needs and certain things, I think they may be better than the private schools in a lot of
Yeah.
cases.
It's a
But
necessary system, right? It's a
right,
necessary solution, but some of the execution is not in the best interest of the students, I believe. It's often in the best interest of teachers unions, bureaucracy, and things that are really I think the promise of education is often broken in public schools, and I think that's a sad situation.
tell me about dive into that a little bit. You're in
Yeah,
California.
yeah,
Um, I'm in New
right.
Jersey. It's
Yeah.
not. I mean, California is maybe a little more um, uh, far gone on that aspect of it, at least from public school education standpoint, but not too different than New Jersey.
No, I mean
Um,
the schools in New Jersey are fabulous. I mean, I
fabulous, right?
really are. Yeah,
Known for excellent public schools.
yeah.
Known for a strong teachers union. I'm
Mhm.
not sure about California. I don't know
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
that. Um, Probably one of the better states as far as public school education goes, but yet people feel things are missing. So explain that. Like, what are
Yeah.
some of the things that you have seen, and what are some of the things that you're looking to solve?
You know, at the end of the day, I believe the world needs better creative problem solvers, innovators, and I don't think we need better test takers. It's almost as simple as that on some level, and I think that's what school is um, designed to do on some level is create better memorizers, create better kind of follow the prescribed path kids, and it's designed to feed the machine. Everything from AP courses to college test prep to college acceptance to college. Um, okay, I think kids are overstressed, overscheduled, and completely overwhelmed these days. I think you tell me if you see high school kids overwhelmingly full of confidence, full of purpose and passion, and ready for college when they get there. It's not what I see, and I think school is missing the mark um, by forcing the wrong set of skills on them that are not going to be relevant in the future.
Okay, I would agree with some of those things. What
Okay.
so if you say test taking, so
Yeah.
I think test taking is important
Mhm.
in its own capacity. I think the ability to memorize is important in its own capacity, but I don't think, let me say, in a lot of people's cases, calculus is going to be applicable for certain groups of people, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
maybe engineers that may be applicable, no doubt,
Sure. Sure.
but other groups of people that may not be as applicable. So how does education cater to those different needs while maintaining some standards? I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's a really tricky one. That's a great question, and it's a really tricky one because the things that schools teach by and large and overwhelmingly today are testable. But the skills that I believe and a lot of people believe that students and people are going to need are not necessarily easily testable. It's really difficult to test creativity and innovation. It's really difficult to test creative problem solving and critical thinking skills in a
Right,
standardized manner. It
right.
takes a lot of individualized attention, which public schools don't have the luxury of having,
Agreed.
unfortunately, generally speaking, right? Um, so the solution, I don't know what the solution is for public schools. I wish I did, and that's not my bailiwick,
Right.
unfortunately. You know what I mean? Um,
What's your solution educationally with Giant Leaps Forward? How are you filling in those gaps, right? So they can't do that at
yeah.
school. They come to you.
Mhm.
Um, critical thinking skills are important, right? The creative process is important.
Mhm.
The ability to solve problems is important.
Right.
A lot of those things either they don't have a plan for in school
Mhm.
systems, don't want to. Who knows? I don't know what the exact motive is, but maybe they don't
Yeah.
have time for it. I don't really know.
Yeah,
Wh-
they don't. That's
Right,
one of the things. They don't really have time for it
right.
after they've taught to the tests. There's not a lot of time left for all this other stuff,
So
which
tell me
is
how you guys are going to solve that issue. Tell me a little bit
yeah.
more about that.
Our program is an enrichment program. So it's after school. It's above and beyond, and it's a combination of a one-on-one coaching, weekly one-on-one coaching with our success coaches, and an online curriculum that is hyper personalized to each student. So it starts with their strengths and interests, and it provides them. Or it exposes them to the technologies that are changing the world or the things that are changing the world, and it allows them to become curious and interested in these things and to explore in a stress-free way. All along the way, they're learning critical thinking skills. They're learning more about who they are, more about their strengths and interests, and they're getting benefits that they otherwise wouldn't get in schools.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
it's like I remember I was lucky enough to be in the talented and gifted program.
Yeah, yeah, G&T, that's right.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah,
that was like one
yeah.
of the things that they would basically pull us out of class.
I remember that. Yeah.
I guess I could argue that might have been the number one thing: critical thinking,
Yeah.
deductive reasoning,
Yeah.
the creative process in your thinking,
Mhm.
solving problems, right?
Yeah.
But I have no idea because I am my child is in um uh, private schools, so I don't
Mhm.
know if they have talented and gifted or anything. He's not yet probably old enough to for us to
Mhm.
know that. But I know public school must have something like that still, right? Explain
Yeah.
how this becomes something for what you're doing, how
Mhm.
this becomes something for everyone, so everyone can get those skills. It shouldn't just be, and I
No.
agree with this. Like, right, it was great for me, but what about
Mhm.
all those other kids that were left in
Yeah.
class,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How come they're not able to learn how to deductive reason? I mean, don't we want
Yeah.
all of the people in society to be able to
We
have some of these skills?
we absolutely do. We absolutely whether you are a carpenter, a mechanic, or a rocket engineer, you will benefit from being a better communicator, from being a better problem solver, from being a better critical thinker. Everybody needs these skills, and it's really a shame. Even if, like, you're a sports guy, right? Like, being a better player on the field, you've got to be a critical thinker. You've got to be able to make quick decisions. You have to be an agile, adaptive thinker. But how do we give kids this in public schools? And I wish I had a better answer for that. I think the system needs to change quicker than it's capable of changing.
Talk,
And I think it. Go
talk
ahead.
about critical. Explain to people what critical thinking is. Take a quick step back because
Yeah,
obviously this is
yeah,
what you do. What is deductive reasoning? What is critical thinking? What does problem solving really mean, according to what you guys do? Um,
yeah.
so people can understand because I don't think a lot of people understand how important these skill sets are in
Mhm.
their everyday life, business, being able to do sales, all those kind of things, um,
Yeah.
playing sports, right? Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost as simple as being able to assess the nature of a problem and identify solutions for it. It's things like, what are some real examples of that? You use critical thinking in almost every decision of your life, from like waking up and what's the best way to get your kids dressed and ready for school on time, to buying a house, or to making a car decision. How do you decide on the best lease payments or finance payments on a car? There's steps that you've got to take to take in the information in the world and assess what the right solution is. And it's different. It's different every time. All of those problems are different, but they all require a certain set of skills, like a set of skills where you're analyzing the information objectively, and being able to find the right solution inside there. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
And then technology. So obviously, being a technologist, technology is
Yeah.
everywhere. How can technology help with that process?
Yeah, it can hyper personalize education in a way that may not be possible in public schools. So right now it's
AI
over.
or using AI or
Yeah, essentially machine learning, AI, things like that. So if you think about what one of the challenges in public schools, there's often more students than there are teachers teachers attention, right? So there's a high student to teacher ratio. So that means students can't often get a lot of personalized attention. I'm not at all suggesting you can replace that with computers, because I don't believe you can necessarily. But what I can say is, if you can create platforms and curriculum that do a lot of that work for the students, that can help a student's curriculum be different than everybody else's, um, and more interesting and more engaging to them, then they're going to succeed and learn better. Um, Elon Musk said something along the lines of this: is you don't have to force kids to play video games, right? They once they start playing, they're just hooked. They're in it and they're on it. And there's a reason for that. It engages them on some interesting level. Why can't curriculum and learning be that way as well? And it can be, if it's done properly. Machine learning can help. AI can absolutely help do that sort of thing, so that it naturally engages the kids in a way that it doesn't do right now, in a very standardized form.
that makes a ton of sense.
I mean, I'll ask you some of the things that we talk about in our program that are almost impossibly engaging. Let me ask you this question. Imagine a world where we can, and don't cast judgment on this concept, because that's not what this is about. This is about blue sky thinking. Imagine a world where we could pause or reverse human aging.
Right.
Imagine a world where we can communicate by thought alone. Right? These are big ideas, right? Big concepts that would change the world dramatically, right? These are things that are being worked on today that will likely be solved in your kid's lifetime.
Right.
Those are big, bold statements. These are the sort of things that we talk about in Giant Leaps, and what we do is we help kids think about the consequences of the things that are changing the world, and think about how they fit into that world, how they want to fit into that world, and what skills are going to be necessary in that world. I don't think personally that my daughter's ever going to have to drive a car. That's also a big statement, but it's not unlikely. I drive up and down the 805 here in San Diego all the time, and there's autonomous vehicles, fully autonomous Qualcomm vehicles, nobody driving them, going up and down the highway. You don't think in 12 years from now, 15 years from now, that that's not going to be more of a thing? Is that going away?
Right.
I think so. So all that to say, the world is changing very quickly. We've got to do a better job of having kids understand where the world is going and how they want to be a leader in that world, how they can fit into that world with their natural strengths. And we can do that. We can do it.
It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously the problem solving aspect of it. So explain a little bit more about your curriculum and
Yeah.
how that works.
Yeah. So it's in 6-week modules, 6 or 7-week modules. Each module is based on a prompt, like I just mentioned to you, like imagine a world where we can pause or reverse human aging, or communicate by thought alone. Each module starts with a prompt like that, and then over the next 6 weeks, the student thinks about what that world might look like, what the consequences of that technological shift happening are, and they problem solve. They come up with ways to make that to mitigate the challenges. And along that arc, what they do is they learn real critical thinking skills. They learn how to discriminate between good and bad information, how to find information online, how to use tools and frameworks to assess options and solutions. If you're presented with a number of solutions, or let's say you give a kid a question. Okay, so people are going to live to 150. That's going to what problems might that cause? Let's say they come up with a number of problems, from overpopulation to food shortages and things like that. Okay, pick one of those that naturally interests you, and come up with 5 solutions for it. What are 5 solutions to solve overpopulation? Okay, so you've got 5 solutions now. How are you going to determine which of those solutions is the best solution? So do you see how like the natural progression works? Like we start with something that's kind of interesting and a curious question, and we have the kid design their own pathway through it on some level by using their interests. And then along the way, we give them tools and skills to kind of make sense of the story. So we'll give them tasks like, okay, now go find 5 articles on that talk about overpopulation or about this topic. And how are you going to determine the quality of those articles? We'll give you tools to do that. So we're giving kids what I like to think of as digital literacy skills, to help combat fake news and kind of nonsense information online, things along those lines. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. It makes a ton of sense.
There's a lot of things baked into the program that things like every week they have to bring a prompt home to discuss with their parents, which is awesome. I mean, there's our parents just give amazing feedback on like the conversations that they have with their kids that they otherwise would never have had. These are sort of stress-free conversations that are not about their grades or not about school. They're about open-ended, interesting things. And then every week a student also has to do some journal work, some like with a real pen and real paper. They do some journal work and they think about themselves, and that's been one of the highest rated activities in the program, surprisingly.
Progression. So what kind of progression can they expect over the course of the program?
So along the way, they're accumulating badges and certifications for various things, from different types of critical thinking skills to different skills like like using a risk analysis matrix, or different tools like that. But there's things they take challenges along the way that they get badges for. There's any number of different opportunities for them to progress through the program.
Very interesting. And then at the end, is there an end point, or is it a continuous thing where they can start to see certain type of results? What kind of results would they expect to see from it?
No, the results are really cool. So there's unintended and intended results that we've seen, which is really fascinating. So there were things that we intended for the student to benefit with, right? We intended the student to have better reasoning skills by the end. We intended them to understand their sort of position in the world, to understand where the world is going better, and to have more of an outlook on the career opportunities. For example, I don't know that I would tell a kid today to study to be an accountant and not think that machine learning or something like that isn't going to change that industry very quickly and may be outdated. There are careers that are going to exist in 10 years that haven't even been thought of right now. So what we want to do is have kids think about where the world is going and the opportunities that are going to exist there. So that's one of the benefits. Social emotional well-being is a massive one for us right now. Teens are stressed, they're anxious. I mean, if you look at depression and anxiety rates for teens right now, it's depressing. It's scary and it's depressing. And I think social media has a lot to do with it. And there's a lot of other factors that we can't fix, but what our program does is solve a lot of that. Being a data guy and a tech guy, we collect a lot of data before, during, and after the students are in the program. And 85% of the kids who have gone through the program have self-reported lower anxiety at the end of their end of their program, which is amazing. That wasn't even an intended benefit, but that is, if that was the only benefit, that's awesome. That's really awesome.
Well, it sounds like they're developing confidence and being able to solve problems.
Totally.
being able
Yeah.
to understand what's
Yeah.
going on. If you feel like you're helpless, you're gonna be depressed, right?
Yeah.
You're
Right.
gonna feel like, what am I doing this for, right?
Yeah.
So by helping them to solve problems, figure out things in their
That's right.
life, whether it's business, whether it's their own family, whether it's what they're doing in school, but being able
Yeah.
to solve problems, that creative problem solving, that critical thinking builds confidence. If you
It
feel
does.
like
100%.
you could get a solution out of something,
Mhm.
you're going to be more confident next time you do things. So I think
Absolutely.
that's a huge thing. And people use confidence as a loose word, but it's the ability to get real confidence in your own abilities to do things is a key component.
That could be the
Um,
deciding factor, can it?
Yeah, and you're less depressed when less depressed, but
Yeah.
less likely to be depressed
Right.
if you feel like you could solve some of these things that are out there, knowing that you can't control everything, but the ability to solve everyday issues it
Yeah.
gets you a long way. Gets you a long.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean that high level the things we promote are like creativity,
Mm.
having kids really tap into their creativity, knowing themselves better, their strengths, their interests. Absolutely critical thinking skills. Uh, Personal growth is a big one for me. I think I wish I had access to the tools that I have access to now when I was in high school. I feel like my mindset would have been just in a totally different place. And I think kids would benefit from that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a huge look for adults. There's a lot of self growth, development things available, but the
Yeah.
big problem is we have so many of those things because as kids and as
I'm with
teenagers,
you. I'm tracking you.
we
Yeah.
haven't learned to solve
Yeah.
problems. We haven't learned to get self growth.
Yeah.
It's always like, well, we all go, people go to Tony Robbins or listen to Brian Tracy or,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and that I do think that's why, and I think it's completely misguided.
Mhm.
Why the young kids gravitate towards Gary Vee, and
Yeah. I agree.
which I think is misguided because Gary Vee to me is sell. There's some things he sells that are great,
Mhm.
and there's some things that he does that are really good, but there's a lot of things that it's a leap for people to
Oh
go
yeah.
from
Yeah.
here to where what he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
A-
Yeah.
and I know he talks about like time and all those things, but to articulate that to young people, they don't understand what time means.
Mhm.
They don't like. I say this all the time as an adult. When I was young, it felt like 14 to 16 felt like a long time. Like getting
Right.
to
Right.
college,
Yeah.
it seemed forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you become an adult and you're working, like 20 years goes like this. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So
Yeah.
um, so for young people, they each day is a grind. They don't understand, even if they're enjoying everything they're doing, they
Mhm.
don't understand the concept of time. They
Yeah.
really don't. And that's where the critical thinking skills, and this just comes from someone who's been a football
Yeah.
coach for 20
Sure.
years, not just
Sure.
doing this stuff and been a business owner, but actually worked with young people directly, thousands and thousands of them. The understanding of the concept of time leaves them. And so that is
Yeah.
why they gravitate towards Gary Vee because he's showing them something that they relate to. There is some critical component to it, but it's like a 0 to 100 thing, which
Right.
they also need the
The
1 to
step in
99
between.
part.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Gary
think
Vee sells mindset essentially. Right.
right.
That's how the easiest way I can boil down what I
Yep.
believe he sells is mindset.
He sells
Yeah.
mindset, and they've got to get to a certain point before mindset becomes relevant.
Right. 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 Right.
E
Yeah.
even though I understand what he's selling, and I
Mhm.
understand what his thought process is and his philosophy, but
Yeah.
it's for young people, if they can't get there, this is my thing on it, which is why I think your program is so valuable because if they see something like Gary Vee's talking about hustling, and then they go and hustle and they work hard and they
Right.
put in the time, and then all of a sudden they don't either have the ability or the wherewithal to get the results, then they go back into that depression mode because they don't have the critical thinking skills. They don't have the creative problem solving skills. They don't have
Yeah.
deductive reasoning. So they don't have those things. And because they don't have those things, all of a sudden they'll go back to zero. Right.
Totally.
And that's what we don't want.
Point. That's a great point. I never considered it from that angle, but man, I love that. You could be the grindiest hustler out there, but if you have no creativity that you're bringing to the table, if you've got no problem solving skills, all that effort is going to be, you're banging your head against the wall, I suppose. It's
right. If I want to be if I want to sell chalk for a living, a chalk salesman, there's a chance that I'm probably not going to be wealthy, right? But if I am I decide that I'm going to get my Series 67 and my finance, all the stuff with finance, and start selling stocks and trading, and I put in that same hustle and build relationships, I can become very wealthy. So now, look, there are niches that nobody's ever thought of, okay, that people go into, and they do make a ton of money. The thing is, how do you navigating that is a very difficult part for a lot of kids. Like, they all want to be in music, for example, right? They all want to be musicians. They want to be rappers. They want to be singers. They want to be athletes, right? That's how they all start out, and then they get to tech down the line, right? But there are some kids that want to be in tech right away, but it's like the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to be an athlete. I'm going to be a singer. I'm going to be an actor or whatever. And then they start and they say, oh, I'm going to start a business. What does every kid want to start a business in? Everyone wants to sell me a T-shirt. They all want to be apparel salesman. I mean, they want to be the next Nike, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you can hustle and grind all you want, and you might have a little success locally, but maybe you don't know how to get scale. And that's where all these critical thinking things, and then how to shift into another market. Like, okay, what skills did you learn in your failure? And how can you apply this to your next venture that you're doing now, right? Because you're going to fail a lot. So I think that's where, the programs like yours really make a big difference. And then, obviously, I think the Gary V's have his place where they're they give them some motivation to go and do that. But you're the nuts and the bolts.
Exactly.
Being the nuts and the bolts is what gets them to the point where they can hustle and be successful.
Yeah, completely. I think you brought up an interesting point, that this idea of like adaptability. I think that's one of the top skills that people are going to need in the coming 10 or 20 years. The world is changing very quickly, right? We've got to have kids who are able to kind of roll with the punches. We saw that during COVID times, right? Like a lot of people just hit a wall and shut down and became depressed, and they didn't know what to do next, sort of thing. But there were a lot of people who figured out ways through it, and I don't want to say use the situation because that's got bad connotations, but embraced the situation and found opportunities inside the challenges. And I think those sort of challenges are going to continue to come up in people's lives. They always have, right? They're going to, and I think change is going to happen more and more quickly. If we have kids who are able to adapt to problems quickly, and change tact, and do it with discernment, then we're going to have a successful future for our kids.
Agreed. And on that note, I think that was really good. Tell everybody where they can find you, where, what website, how they can reach out to you. I think programs like what you're doing is the things that are going to change the world. Those are the things that change the world, especially young people's minds. And it's much needed. Tell everybody where they can find you and reach out to you.
Absolutely. Giant Leaps Learning, all one word, giantleapslearning.com. Go check it out. And you can reach me directly at any time at michael@giantleapslearning.com. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to come to respond to emails.
Absolutely. Perfect. Mike, thanks so much for being on. This was great. I could talk this topic for 500 hours.
Yeah, yeah. As could I. Yeah, it's important. You know, I'm glad to hear that being who you are and what you do. I'm glad to hear that education isn't just like a niche topic. It applies to all of us. It's the source of the success of our society. As simple as that, right? We
There's no
need
doubt.
we need an educated society. So thank you for having me on, Coach. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And everybody, you could like, subscribe. Please do so. It's been great again and having another season in this. We'll probably do another 5 or 6 episodes before
Love
we
it.
shake out to the summer. Thanks again to Mike Trezza for being on today. And he's got a valuable program. Make sure you check it out. Until next time in a Success for Life podcast, this is Coach Schuman signing out.